Hey guys, it's Sick, and today I want to talk to you about MQ2Bst. So we've had MQ2Bst in process for a couple of months now. I guess we started back in December, and we're about ready to release this bad boy. So it's a good time to do a video, talk about some of the functions and features that we have with MQ2Bst, and go over some of that information for your benefit. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to load up MQ2Bst. So plug in MQ2Bst load. I have this little window here so you can see what I'm typing. We're going to load that up. It's going to open up the MQ2Bst settings window. All the chat with this name class plugins have this window now, where you have the plugin output settings and pulling. If you X out of this, your plugin output is just going to go to your regular MQ2 window. But for the purpose of the video and showing you how it works and stuff, we'll just use this window here. So if you see, it shows that I'm missing a couple of abilities. We need those abilities. These ones in particular are ones from TBL that I don't have on this character. Made a couple of new tunes to run through from 85 to 115. This guy just happens to be 110, so he's missing some of the TBL stuff. But if it says you're missing something, even if it looks like it's low level, if you're missing something, it's because the plugin needs it / wants it. Some of these classes have abilities that don't upgrade for a very long time or ever, and you do need those low versions. You can always do a beast missing, and it'll just recap the stuff that you're missing there. But let's talk about some of the stuff. Okay, so first of all, I want to get out of the way buffing. Buffing is built into this if you are in a non-bring-your-own spell mode. By default, BYOS is off, and if BYOS is off, that means that the plugin's going to handle buffing everybody. It's going to handle memorizing what spells you need, and it's all set up just to be out-of-the-box functional, okay? So let's take, for example, if I click one of these buffs off, Spiritual Empowerment, it's going to automatically memorize it, and it's going to cast it on me. It would actually say casting on, but I turned that off for the purposes of doing the video. And then we go back to what our spell is. Now, all of the chat with this name class plugins, we currently use MQ2Bst buffs to communicate what buffs we have. There's a couple of bugs with that, but we appear to have most / all of it fixed. We're also going to be adjusting the time after we zone to cast our buffs and do our downtime routine, because even though we verify that yes, I have zoned and I'm a real person, there can sometimes be a delay between when the server sees that you're in and the server reapplying your buffs. So we're going to add a delay for that, and that'll be in the next patch. So the chain buffing on people stuff should go away. If it doesn't for whatever reason, you just go on that character, unclick a buff, that'll refresh your MQ2Bst buffs, and then you'll be good to go. But to load on everybody, since I use EQBC, I do a BCAA / plugin MQ2Bst buffs load, and it's already loaded on everybody. So if I tabbed over to my Beast Lord and I clicked off some buffs, clicked over to my SK, clicked off some buffs, you'll see that immediately my Beast Lord is casting buffs on my Shadow Knight because he's missing them. Now there's some considerations there, okay? Take, for example, the vibrancy line, okay? Now my Cleric, I have that blocked on my Cleric because Yelp overwrites it. So what would happen if it was not blocked is as soon as my Yelp faded, combat ended, Yelp had gone away, my Beast Lord would say, hey, the Cleric needs Vibrancy, I'm gonna memorize Vibrancy and cast it. And it would do that every time that Yelp faded, since Yelp overwrites Vibrancy. So to combat that, I just have Vibrancy blocked on my Cleric, and since it's added as blocked and it adds to the Kiss Buffs file, we see that the Cleric has it blocked, and we know we don't need to try and cast it on the Cleric. Okay, now we got the buffing kind of stuff out of the box stuff out of the way. Let's talk about some of the options. We have a lot of options with Beast Lord. If you're not too familiar with what Beast Lords offer, they bring a whole lot of stuff to the group. Their synergy buff is really cool. Primalist synergy, their Mangle, which is like their kind of their primary bread and butter ability, has a 100% chance to trigger Primalist synergy, which increases the damage of next melee attacks by 7,200 points. That doesn't sound like a lot of damage, but it really is a lot of damage. And since I run a melee groups, it's really handy for my melee tunes, and it gives my my tank extra damage too. So the synergy is really nice. And then we have things like Paragon and Focused Paragon. These can pretty much keep my group in permanent, you know, mana and endurance, keep them good to go. Now, for we have options for Focus Paragon, Endurance, Focus Paragon, Mana. These are the checks that it looks for before it casts Focus Paragon. Same thing with Paragon, Endurance, Paragon, Mana. We have a toggle option for Use Paragon. There is not a toggle option for Focus Paragon because we want to always use Focus Paragon. It's a really short recast, like 1:24, so it's not something we hold. Regular Paragon is a 10-minute recast, so that may be something that you know, you might want to save for something in particular, like doing a mass group buff with it or something. So we have a toggle. You can just uncheck that if you don't want to use that. Otherwise, it'll use those things. Use Focus. If you know, for some reason you don't want to use the focus line, you can unclick that and then it won't cast focus. Group Shrink and Pet Shrink, those do exactly what it sounds like. It checks to see the avatar height of your group and your pet, and if it's over 2, it will shrink them. Pet Taunt Toggle is pretty neat. So you can see here my Pet Taunt is off. If my tank is dead and I have Pet Taunt Toggle on, I'll automatically toggle on my pet to taunt, and I will start treating my pet as if it is the tank. So that can be handy to help a group recovery come back. You can click that off if you don't want it to automatically turn on taunt. We have Slow All and Slow Named. This is with the Shah's Reprisal AA. We also have the spells in there, but at higher levels you just use the AA. Now, there are a couple things with this we haven't sorted out in the Chat with This Name class plugins yet, and that is if somebody resists it or is specifically if they are immune to it, it's still going to try and cast on them, which is why we have the options to slow all and toggle off slow named as well, in case you run into something where you're in an area that you can't slow them and it keeps trying to slow them over and over and over. Eventually we'll have it set up to where we put all our mobs in some sort of container in a vector, and we cycle through them, and if we get a message back saying that we can't you know, we can't affect this one with this type of ability, then we'll say, hey, don't cast it on this ability, but that's not in there right now, so that is what it is. Use Bando Swap. This is something really cool. I'm really proud of how this functions and what it does. So Beast Lords have a thing called Vindication, and when they're under Vindication, they get to have a chance to have an additional melee attack when they use a dot. Now, Beast Lords, their bloodline is already super good. The damage from it is already bananas. Not even taking into consideration the dot damage from it. Just the regular damage is bananas. So when we're under Vindication, we want to swap to a two-handed set, and we want to spam blood as much as we can because it's more efficient than casting our other stuff anyway. But the fact that we can chain cast blood and get that chance for that additional two-handed proc means really big damage. Now the you see, I was in my two-handed set, but I have used Bando Swap on. This mob came in, and I swapped to our one-handed set for outside of Vindication, meaning I didn't have Vindication on, so I don't want to be using my two-handed set. And these don't have to be named anything special. It looks at your bandolier set and say, hey, do I have a bandolier set that has either one-handers or hand-to-hands? And do I have a bandolier set that has a two-handed set? And if I do, then it'll use those to swap if you have used Bando Swap on. So let's talk about dots. So Beast Lords are very mana hungry. They love mana. Their shit is very expensive. This is 8,000 mana for Endemic line. Bloodline, 10,000 mana for the Bloodline. We don't want to be casting dots all the time, and we want to make sure we have a pool of mana available should we get in a situation where we do want to use our dots. So we have something called dot mana minimum. I just added this to SK as well. This allows us to set a bottom number to use our dots at, right? So if we're below 60 mana, we're never going to use our dots. I also have logic in here that, you know, if we're fighting a mob and the mob's 10% health, we're not going to throw a dot on it. That would just be a waste, with the exception being blood under certain circumstances because of how blood functions. But for normally, like, we're not going to be ooming ourselves. There's a lot of consideration to make sure that does not happen. Okay, so we talked about dots, we talked about dot mana minimum, talked about BOS, group shrink, pet taunt toggle, slows, bandos, feign. Okay. Because this class has feign, all the classes are going to have auto stand on feign, which is like if a mob feign deaths you, we want it to be able to auto stand up. But classes that can actually use feign, we have some toggles for, right? So if use feign is on, then we want to either feign at health. So if my health goes below 80 for whatever reason, I want to feign. If my aggro goes above 80, I want to use feign. And then the use stand, or the auto stand, is going to stand us back up. With that being said, we have an auto stand on feign health, right? So if I get hit and I'm at 20 health and I feign, I don't want to auto stand on feign at 20 health, right? I want to wait until maybe I get a heal or something, or maybe I'm not going to get a heal because we're wiping. And so the stand on feign at health is going to make sure that I stay feign until I reach that 80% health, and I'm going to stand back up. Use mending. So if we click on use mending, since we're in downtime now, we're gonna memorize our mending spell, and we'll use mending on our group members. We have 3 heal values set: MA heal, group heal, and self heal. These are just values for those individuals. Now, if you're in a group, it'll use your group heal number for yourself. The self is just if you're not in a group, it'll use that self heal number. Use Paragon, we went over. Snare is just the pet AA that gives you the snare proc. If for some reason you didn't want to snare, you can click that off. But we've got a bunch of stuff in here. The out of the box is intended to just function. If you want to use your own spell lineup or use your use your own setup, you can do the BYOS and then do your own spells, and in doing that you would be handling your own buffs as well. Because with BOS, we're not memorizing spells, so we're not going to be swapping spells and then trying to memorize the spell that you had memorized previously. Also, because of the way that the caster classes function now, if you want to memorize a spell yourself or open or look in your spell book, we don't want you getting stuck in your spell book. You see, if I open it right now, it's going to immediately exit my spell book. You can just beast pause on, and then you can do anything that you would normally do with a beast pause on. Now, if I try to change a setting while I have beast pause on, it's going to tell me that I'm being silly. So if I try to change to mode 0, it's going to say, hey, the plugin is paused, get your head out of the dirt. But let's turn this off. Beast pause, if I can spell, off. And since I'm in manual, or excuse me, I'm in assist mode, I'm sitting back down and waiting for combat to happen. Now, just like the other chat with this name class plugins, your range, your camp radius is the radius at which you would like to do stuff should stuff be happening inside that radius. Okay, so what this means is if my tank pulls a mob and that mob and my tank are within that red circle, I'm gonna start doing stuff. So if you see, we immediately went to fighting it. Roar Thunder, Eagle Strike, Round Kick, Shaw's Reprisal, Eagle Strike, Fury, Mangle, Savagery, Focus, Clamor of Claws, Blood. Now again, like I said, the mob was nearly dead, but we were casting Blood. That's intended. That's just because of the efficiency of Blood being so good. Now, if you noticed, Focus, Clamor of Claws, if you know anything about Beast Lords or know a little bit about Beast Lords, they have a Clamor of Claws spell line, okay, and it's an AoE. They don't get another focused Clamor of Claws after the one that they get, which is at like something stupid, like I forget what level it is, but it's lower level. It sounds like you should have a better one afterwards, but you don't. So just tried to cast Shaw's Reprisal twice. That's just because I was in a position and I moved, and or is it not taking hold? Don't know. Anyway, what else are we missing? So we got all these auto assist at. With the chat with this name class plugins, you can do auto assist at 100, and I do that because again, it's checking to see, hey, does my MA have a target? and is the mob within my camp radius. And if those things are met, then it's going to do the stuff. So unlike some other stuff, you don't have to wait until the mob gets 99 or 98 or manually call an attack. You can set it to 100, and it's not going to do wacky stuff. It's not going to go chase. It's not going to go running way out there and start attacking stuff at 100. But for the most part, I run this pretty much out the box as is, and I've done all of TBL and TOV on multiple tunes, and it works great. I love it. I love Beast Lords. There's a couple of, like, you know, not hidden stuff, but cool features that are just in there that just function, right? So right now, if I click, or you see that G-hold. Okay, G-hold is off, right? I just turned it off. Automatically clicks G-hold on because we have, you know, we have G-hold available. We're not in in some kind of like tank mode, and I want to be able to turn on G-hold so my pet doesn't go and do wacky stuff. So there's some small, like really small quality of life stuff that's just kind of built in just to make things nice. Speaking of tank mode, if I do Beast Mode 4, if I go to a tank mode, I'm gonna swap over to some of the pet tanky type stuff, and I'm gonna load up some pet spells. I'm gonna put the protection line on my pet. This bad boy right here. Or wait, where is it? Where is it? Verkacax protection. I don't know where it went. I'm sorry, man. But we're gonna put the come on. Yeah. So we're gonna put the protection spell on him, right? So this increases his health and mitigation by blah 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 blah. And we keep our other stuff memorized. Now, if I go Beast Mode 1, if I go back into Beast Mode, I'm gonna memorize the aggression line. I'm gonna pop aggression back onto the pet, which takes place of the protection line, and you know, gives us more damage and lowers their aggro that they generate. Now, at some point, I screwed something up, and it was no longer in MQ2Bst to throw that aggression line up on the pet. Vindy helped point that out a couple days ago, so that'll be in next update as well. Okay, couple questions that we run into. Actually, I had some frequently asked questions. Let me open that real quick. Frequently asked questions. Shit. On the wrong page. Beast. Frequently asked questions. Here we go. Okay, why am I not buffing anybody? So I mentioned about the MQ2 buffs. We need to be able to see that they are in the file, and what buffs they have before we buff them. We actually try and err on do not buff them. If we don't know what they have, if we can't see their buffs, if we don't know what they're tracking, don't fucking buff them. So that's what we try and do. And then Bando Swap went over Paragon Growl. So this is something that comes up every now and again. So at some point, Beast Lords get the Feralgia line. Feralgia actually gives you a Growl buff. It's named something different than the actual like single Growl buff that you get, but it's the same thing. So we just err on the side of being able to use the Swarm Pet for extra damage, plus it gives us the free Growl without taking up a slot. If you had BYOS on and you had Growl memorized, it's going to cast it. Just for the out-of-the-box settings, it's going to use the Feralgia. We went over Blood, we went over Mana, playing Possum. Okay, so there's that really annoying bug right now with EQ with the stuck spell gems, and we're using Play Possum to combat that. We have some other options like using Origin or like Throne of Heroes or something. It makes me really nervous with the idea of using Origin, that our tune may disappear at some point and then we're screwed. So we're using Play Possum for the stuck spell gems. And what that basically does is your gems get stuck, you can't cast any spells, it's going to Play Possum and it'll unscrew your spell stuff. Hopefully Daybreak gets that fixed soon, and then we can just take out the spell gem stuck thing. If you're in mode 0, it's not going to do the spell gem stuck, but if you're in mode 1 and you try to manually cast a spell, let's cast a spell, it'll probably, it might have been too long. Yeah, okay. So you couldn't really, it didn't output it because I have it being silenced, but you see it'll try and flop me after I do that because it thinks the spell gems are stuck. Well, it did, whatever. What's the next question? Focus Clamor of Claws, 98, but I'm 115. Okay, we went over that. Why Spiritual V and not Unity? Okay, we went over that a little bit. Beast pause on. So I'm going to pause this just so I can memorize this buff. It's under regen. Where is it? Regen. I hate how they have Beast Lord spells set up. Okay, so for the Unity, it casts both spells, Spiritual Vibrancy and Spiritual Empowerment. Now we already do we do these. We just do them individually. Okay, so Beast Pause off. Right. So we're memorizing Empowerment because I clicked it off, and we're going to cast Empowerment. Now we do these separately, and we do it on purpose. I know that there's the Unity spell that casts both, but I want to check each one individually, and then I just want to cast the one that is specific to what we're trying to cast, and actually use Mending off. I did screw up at some point, and I defaulted use Mending on. I personally don't find much need for use Mending, and I would recommend leaving it off, unless if you really need that extra heal. Otherwise, keep that dot memorized in case you're fighting stuff you need extra deeps on. So, okay, we talked about Unity. Lower level feels weird, question mark. So, Beast Lords, they're kind of weird. They have a lot of spell lines that are like they decided to start a spell line and then the line disappeared, or they don't get like this awesome class-defining spell line until later. So, for super low level stuff, there's some kind of stop gaps to kind of just fill in to make sure we have stuff to cast. Now I have done quite a bit of lower level stuff on this, but mainly everything has been spent on 85 plus, making sure that feels real good. So if there's some lower level stuff that doesn't feel right or things that are a bit weird, just post up on the thread. It's definitely something we can take a look at. But other than that, like, everything out the box is pretty fantastic. It has access to all the same modes that you would expect with all the other Chat with This Name class plugins, all the other like shared stuff we call common. All the common stuff is all exactly the same. With the pulling and auto assist at camp radius, all that stuff. But that's MQ2Bst. I suspect it'll probably be finally released for purchase next update, maybe, question mark, exclamation point, interrobang. But until then, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for the interest on the video, and I sincerely appreciate the love and support. I've been a little under the weather lately, so I look like a steaming pile of shit, and I don't feel too great either. So thanks for bearing with me. I will talk to you all soon. It didn't squeak the first time, so I had to do it again.